What's your
Afternoon.
evidence? What's the evidence you've got of what's going on?
Have a look at my screen if you could. You'd see that there was more and more cases of COVID-19 occurring. There's clearly still anxiety about COVID-19 in the community where I work in Berkshire. I struggle to understand the rush towards this so-called Freedom Day on the 19th, when we know cases are increasing, as they have done previously. We know when this happens that this government has form for making decisions too late after the cases increase. This time round, they seem to be accelerating the case increase and relying upon the fact that we've made some advances in treatment and on the vaccine rollout. It strikes me as pretty irresponsible, and I struggle to find any medical professional who's happy about the management that's being considered and indeed implemented by this government. I
presume the government will argue it's already put off this so-called Freedom Day for 4 weeks. There's never a good time to lift restrictions.
I heard that said. I think it was by Lucy Fraser that, that somehow, if not now, when? I mean, please. Everybody just needs to grow up in government and recognise that this is a serious pandemic. Understand that infectious disease is actually quite simple. It's about preventing transmission, i.e. keeping people who have got COVID-19 away from others. And everything this government has done in the last 18 months has made this worse, is increased transmission and indeed increased the risk of mutation. And what really does concern me is if you're going to go down this herd immunity route, which they seemingly are doing belatedly, you are in danger of creating a mutation that is resistant to the vaccine. And then you've got to tell the public that we're going back down into another lockdown in the autumn and winter, which I quite understand people don't want to do. But what are we saying? That there are so many deaths worth expending in order to retain our so-called freedoms? I don't want to live in a society that values life so cheaply.
When Chris Whitty talks about us not being out of the woods, bit of an understatement, is it?
Well, I sort of question Chris's approach in all of this. On a separate issue, I left government because my principles and my professionalism was basically questioned by what the government was doing at that time. I couldn't support something that I knew to be harmful for the future of my country. I do want to ask the Chief Medical Officer the question that when he reads his General Medical Council guidance on the practice of a good doctor, i.e. do no harm to others, how he can stand next to somebody and advocate a policy of opening up Britain at the moment at a time when we have not got this virus under control. We do not have enough of an uptake of the vaccine double jabbed in the population. And we know that there are mutations occurring here and elsewhere around the world that may very well endanger the effectiveness of these vaccines. I sort of question whether Chris Whitty should really be associating himself with this in any way whatsoever. And it's not enough to keep issuing press releases or comments saying, oh, it might get a bit difficult in the future to try to absolve someone from responsibility. If you are in government, be it as a civil servant or as a politician, you are ultimately responsible for this policy of opening up prematurely without proper controls in place and without proper vaccine
Far from it,
coverage.
though, aren't these comments talking about could reach quite scary levels within weeks and not out of the woods? Isn't that distancing himself from what the Prime Minister had to say? Boris Johnson yesterday, in fact, saying it was highly probable the worst of the pandemic was over.
Just me in politics, I've heard the line, oh, I'm staying on board the ship to try to make it a more moderate policy. It's better that I stay within the tent because, I'm worried about what would happen if I resigned. It's absolute BS. Ultimately in life, you have to draw the line and you have to say, I'm sorry, I am not supporting this and I am resigning. And I think we're reaching the point where anybody with a medical qualification or indeed any qualification that's that is relevant in a pandemic needs to ask themselves the question why other countries around the world are looking on at Britain's essentially experiment and wondering what on earth we are doing. And I personally, I couldn't do it. I could not be standing there and supporting this policy. I recognise people are fed up. I recognise people want to get back to normal. We all do. We all want to do that. But it must be the right thing to do to be cautious, because I don't want to see people coming through this surgery, or indeed any other surgery in the country who've got long COVID, which we're seeing much, much more of, or indeed in the worst case examples going in, and we're hearing about young people going in now to hospital properly sick, properly unwell. This is not the flu. I don't want to see that just because we have a government that seems to want to just play games with a virus it doesn't understand and it has never had the control of.
Well, if Chris Whitty wants to come onto the programme, he's very welcome. One question, are you going to be wearing your mask?
I'd be very happy to see him interviewed, to be honest with you, because I can't understand his approach.
Indeed. Well, one question, come Monday, will you be wearing masks?
Yes. Yes, I mean, I think in enclosed places, wear masks. Everyone, the thing is that we can have some semblance of normality. We can go on holidays, but we need to recognise that the close concentration of people, like we saw outside Wembley, is going to increase the spread of this virus. We know this. So yes, everybody should continue to wear a mask indoors. Everybody should continue to wear masks on public transport or anywhere where there is a concentration of people gathering. That is the only responsible way forward. And it's a small price to pay for us to have some normality back in our lives.